In 1911, the American government did something it had almost never done before. It took the most powerful company in the entire world, an oil empire so dominant that it controlled very nearly all of the oil in the country, and it deliberately smashed it into more than 30 separate pieces. This was meant to kill the monster off, once and for all, forever. Instead, decades later, two of the very biggest broken pieces quietly found each other again and joined back together to become even bigger than the monster had ever been. This is the story of ExxonMobil. Here is the pattern worth learning. Call it reassembling the fragments. When you are broken apart at the very top of a boom, the smartest move of all is to wait patiently and then to recombine at the absolute bottom of the next great crash. Because scale that you buy cheaply, right in the middle of a downturn, when everyone else is frozen with fear, is the cheapest scale that you will ever buy. And the very same regulators who once feared your size will often wave the New Deal through, precisely because the whole industry suddenly looks so weak. So travel back to the early 1900s. One single company, built by the most famous businessman of the entire age, had come to control the oil of a whole nation. It was called Standard Oil. And it was so vast, and so ruthless, and so completely dominant, that the public came to genuinely fear it. And the government finally decided that it simply had to go. So in 1911, the highest court in all of America ordered Standard Oil to be broken apart and shattered into more than 30 fully independent companies. Two of the very largest fragments were Standard Oil of New Jersey, which would slowly grow into Exxon, and Standard Oil of New York, which would eventually become Mobil. And they were sent out into the world as entirely separate and fiercely competing rivals. And for almost 90 long years, that is exactly what they were. Two enormous oil companies, both born from the very same broken empire, now fighting each other bitterly all across the globe. The great breakup, it truly seemed, had actually worked. The monster was gone for good, replaced at last by real competitors. But then, in the late 1990s, a genuine disaster struck the whole oil industry at once. The price of crude oil suddenly collapsed, falling all the way down toward just $10 a barrel. Costs were climbing, profits were simply vanishing, and even the mighty giants were now bleeding money and quietly afraid. This was the fork. Each company could try to grit its teeth and tough out the terrible storm all alone. Or the old, scattered pieces could do something truly unthinkable. And so, in 1999, at the very deepest bottom of that crash, the two largest surviving pieces of the old Standard Oil empire chose to merge straight back together in a single deal worth around $80 billion. It was, at that time, the largest industrial combination in all of American history. The very breakup that had been so carefully designed to kill the monopoly had now, in effect, quietly begun stitching itself back together again. And this time, remarkably, the government simply approved it. Now imagine, instead, that they had never merged at all and had each tried to ride out that brutal crash entirely alone. Think carefully about what would most likely have happened next. Weakened and desperately short of cash, one or even both of them might well have been swallowed whole by other rivals who were busy merging at that very same frightening moment. They would have limped into the new century as mere second-tier players, with far less power against the giant, oil-rich nations. But by choosing to combine at the exact instant when everyone else was panicking, they did not just barely survive that crash, they used it to make themselves utterly dominant. And that is the real quiet genius of the timing. In a roaring boom, everyone is confident, prices are sky high, and a merger of two giants would terrify the regulators and cost an absolute fortune. But at the very bottom of a crash, assets are suddenly cheap, rivals are desperate and distracted, and the watchdogs are worried only about survival and not about size. The single worst moment for the whole industry turned out to be the single best possible moment to go and build something truly enormous. Today, ExxonMobil is the largest oil and gas producer in the entire Western world, pumping millions of barrels every single day and posting some of the very largest profits ever recorded by any company in all of history. The empire that America once broke so carefully into 30 separate pieces did not, in the end, stay broken at all. Its biggest fragments simply waited patiently for exactly the right storm and then put themselves right back together. Now, it has certainly not been a clean or a simple story. From a catastrophic oil spill that badly scarred an Alaskan coastline to fierce and lasting battles over exactly what it knew and precisely when about a changing climate, this company has carried very heavy controversy indeed. But through every bit of it, the core machine, that great reassembled giant, just kept right on running. Look back, now, at the shape of the whole thing. A monster, deliberately broken apart at the very height of its power. Then, long, quiet decades spent living as separate rivals. And then, at the single darkest and most frightening moment of a crash, the bold decision to recombine, at the exact time when everyone else was far too scared to move at all. The breakup was never really the end of the empire. It turned out to be nothing more than an intermission. So here is a lesson worth keeping. The very best time to build, to buy, or to combine is very often the exact moment when everyone all around you is panicking and pulling sharply back. Strength that is assembled during a crisis is the cheapest and very often the most durable strength that there is. So ask yourself, honestly, when the next great storm finally comes and everyone rushes for the exits, will you have the nerve to do the precise opposite and quietly start putting the pieces back together?